What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today we have a 12-team Superflex tight end premium PPR startup mock draft, and we're going to be doing this almost head to head, but we're going to be doing this with a special guest today, and we're going to be doing it with Garret Price of the Dynasty Nerds. So big thanks to Garret for joining us today. But before we bring Garret in, make sure you guys go join our Discord. In our Discord, we are doing a giveaway for a free signed NFL jersey mystery box. All you have to do to enter this giveaway is be a member of our Discord, which is free to join, and be subscribed to this channel. Once you do those two things, you will be entered to win, and we will be giving that away at the end of this month. So you still have time to enter if you haven't already. But let's bring in the man of the hour, Garret Price, the Dynasty Nerds. Let's see if we can get him in here. Garret, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. So, thank you first and foremost for joining me today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, we talked about this a long time ago as a possibility, and I'm glad we're able to follow through on it. And I always love mock drafting, so this works out great for me.
Oh yeah, me too. Do you have a specific strategy in mind?
I try to be very fluid in my startups. I do like to trade a lot in startups, and obviously for like this exercise, we won't be doing that. But I do love like trading. I'm trying to find value, whether that's moving down, moving up, trying to find the tiers. But no, in this, I'm gonna see how things fall, what things look like, and just try to draft the best team possible.
Okay. All right. Well, let's let me share my screen. I will pull up our draft. It looks like we got folks in here, and I'm gonna move us over here so we get more of a full screen go. But yeah, I noticed you picked the 10th pick in the draft. Is there a reason for that? Do you like being towards the end?
Well, I wasn't 100% sure how this was going to work at first. And without looking, I just clicked the 105 because I like to get one of those five starting quarterbacks. But then I was like, well, if we're the only two in the draft and the rest are bots, I don't want us to be back to back. So I decided to go like towards the end because I've done a few startups from this. Actually, I can't say a few. I've done one startup from towards the end this year. I haven't done a lot of startups this year, but I've done one towards the end, and it's different than early because you're not guaranteed one of these good quarterbacks. So you have to think a little bit more. You have to change your strategy a little bit more, and so that's kind of what I was hoping to do here is try to figure out how to make it work without getting an elite quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. And I chose 106 because I wanted to get into that upper tier. I want to get one of those elite quarterbacks. And to me, I think there's, you know, five or six guys that I really would be okay with. I think six probably is my number. I was fine
Uh-huh.
with Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Hurts, Burrow, and T Law. Those are kind of the guys that I was okay with. So
Yeah,
I'll take whichever is the last one available. And maybe one of these guys goes Justin Jefferson and I get a pick between the two. But
sure.
that was kind of my pick there.
Well, seeing the jerseys behind you, I wasn't sure if you were at that point because you were like, I want to get my boy J Jeff, but I don't blame you. If I have an opportunity to get an elite young quarterback, it's just too tough to pass up on.
Yeah, and I'm the same. So when I'm doing these super flex leagues, which is primarily what I play in the most, is these super flex leagues now. Played one QB for a long time, but once I went super flex, I couldn't go back.
Yep.
And I just I've been super QB heavy. I usually go heavy really early on both of these quarterbacks. Usually in first, second, or first and third round. That's kind of where I go. But I'm gonna go and get Justin Herbert. I have him just a little bit above T Law there, but I ended up having one of those guys. It wasn't Justin Jefferson, but it was Jamar Chase that went early.
Yeah. That was a little bit of surprise to see Jamar Chase go after Mahomes and Allen. I wasn't expecting that. I'm interested. I don't know these guys. Maybe you know these guys. I'd be curious as to what his rationale there was.
Yeah, me too. And all of these guys actually are either pulled straight from my Discord or they're guys that I play in leagues with.
Okay.
So I will be asking him after this why he went Jamar Chase.
Oh, I gotta turn my sound off. I didn't realize there was all the sound on the app here. Sorry.
No, you're okay. It looks like you got Trevor Lawrence anyways down at 110.
I'm pretty surprised and I'm very happy with it because like I said, I kind of moved down and I was hoping Justin Fields fell to me. That's who I was kind of hoping would fall to me at that point. But he went right after Justin Jefferson at pick 7. Then Anthony Richardson went at 1-9. And the hype is really high. And look, I get it. I completely understand why the hype is so high on Anthony Richardson. He could find himself in that top tier after, no time at all. But there's just a little too much risk for me to be able to do that. So they bailed me out by leaving T-Law there for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially, and some people like to take that risk. I would say I'm more a little bit calculated risk when I take players in some of these startups. I'm definitely not going to be taking a ton of risk early on in like the first couple picks because I think those are really your cornerstone pieces. You want to have guys that are really safe, that you can build around for a while. At least that's the way that I play. And so, Richardson, it's just too risky for me to bank my first round pick in a startup on.
Yeah, I could justify it a little more easily in the second, but I'm very risk averse early, very, very risk averse early. So I need to see something out of these guys or just feel like they're absolutely foolproof. Like full, transparency. Had Fields been gone and Lawrence been gone, I was considering Bijan Robinson there, which I guess you could say, like, isn't that somewhat risk? Yes, he's a rookie, so any rookie carries some sort of risk, but we're talking about one of the best prospects that we've ever seen. So,
Yep.
but with T-Law still being there, I couldn't pass him up. And then, Bijan went, or actually Lamar Jackson went, then Bijan, Lamb, AJ Brown. And then I was up next and I was able to get my boy Garrett Wilson at 2-3.
Love it.
Huge Garrett Wilson fan. Love his game. Love what he did with just a myriad of different quarterbacks last year. Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, Mike White. There was probably someone else at one point. Who knows? But, all the different quarterbacks he had to play with still put up offensive rookie of the year numbers. Now he gets Aaron Rodgers. Like, this dude is poised. Like, I legitimately think he could end up being a top 5 receiver. Maybe not fantasy points wise, but at least in yardage this year. I think we're going to see a breakout year. He's going to be a wide receiver 1 for fantasy football purposes, and he's going to be tiptoeing towards that upper echelon.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would definitely feel comfortable saying that he should be considered in that same tier with, Lamb and AJ Brown. I think he's right there. I think Jefferson and Chase are probably in the tier of their own.
For
There's
sure.
not really anybody else that's going to be up there, but I think Garrett Wilson could be argued to be in that next tier down.
Yep.
If he's not now, he will be at the end of the season, is what my thought process is.
Yeah, and if there was any player in the league that at some point I could see entering that Chase and Jefferson series, or not series, but that tier, it would be Garrett Wilson. Now, if we're talking guys that aren't in the NFL yet, I would probably say Marvin Harrison Jr. is that guy. So, but I do have a slight Buckeye bias, but it works out that their talent seems to be pretty solid most years.
Yeah, I know you guys on the show. I know you guys have a little bit of a Buckeyes bias, but that's all right. I kind of have one too, and I'm not even from Ohio. I just like the Buckeyes, and I think that they've been producing elite NFL talent for the last couple of years, especially at that wide receiver position. So, you see, as we went a couple picks down, I ended up taking the other guy from Ohio State, and I go Chris Olave. I think there's a real possibility too. I'm not as high on him as I am Garrett Wilson, but they're close enough. I think it's not being talked about enough in the dynasty community that Derek Carr is an upgrade at quarterback, from what he was playing with. Last year playing with a mix of Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. Derek Carr, as much as people like to talk trash about him, he is an upgrade, and you should kind of view Derek Carr similar to how you view a Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. He kind of does put out similar production, and I think it's a green light for Chris Olave this year. I mean, I know we're still waiting on the Michael Thomas return and things like that, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into it. But I think even with Michael Thomas on the field, I think Chris Olave is going to be the wide receiver 1 for the New Orleans Saints, and I think he has the opportunity to fall into a bunch of targets this year as well.
And they're not the exact same guy, but we saw Derek Carr give Devontae Adams a wide receiver, a legit top 5 wide receiver 1 season last year. So we know that he's capable of getting his wide receivers enough targets and well thrown targets to be able to capitalize and be an elite asset. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, and I'm a little disappointed because I was trying to be sneaky here because I've been doing it all off season, and I've been trying to grab Kyler Murray in the third round all off season long because I
Yeah.
think the value is just way too good on Kyler Murray. With a lot of people worried about how much time he's going to miss this year, and then you have the rumors of could the Cardinals be tanking for Caleb Williams? I just don't think that that's I don't think that that's in the realm of possibilities. And even if it is, you can't tell me that Kyler Murray wouldn't be a starter for another franchise next season, anyways. I just think Kyler Murray, when he's healthy, man, he scores so many fantasy points for your teams. It's a huge value this offseason. I've been screaming by Kyler Murray all offseason.
No, you're absolutely right. With that contract, he's going to start somewhere. Like if they are going to deal Kyler Murray, they're going to deal him to a team that needs him because that team's not trading for him unless they can stomach that contract. And you're not stomaching that contract unless he's a starting quarterback for you. So one way or another, he will be a starting quarterback next year.
Yep, absolutely. And as we come around the turn too, we kind of saw Tyreek Hill, Brees Hall, CJ Stroud, Jameer Gibbs, Bryce Young, some of these rookies coming off the board there in that second and third round early. What are your thoughts on Jameer Gibbs being drafted as the RB3 in this mock draft?
It's interesting. I put a tweet out the other day and I said, assuming Bijan Robinson is the running back one, how would you rank the next four running backs in Nerds ADP? And these are the next four guys in the Nerds ADP. And I kid you not, it seemed like every single person had a different order somehow. I know with all the people that responded, like clearly one of them had to overlap somewhere, but it seriously felt like everyone had a different order. And it really comes down to what you prioritize in a startup. There's some people that prioritize winning right away in a startup. If that's the case, you're probably looking at McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor. If you value youth and you look at, windows of availability for these players, then Gibbs and Brees Hall are going to be more your flavor. Are you a little more worried about, injuries? Well, Brees Hall's coming off a big injury. Christian McCaffrey, fair or not, has that injury prone label. There's just so many different variables to measure out with all four of these guys that I think you could take them in just about any order. And I don't think anyone's going to overly argue with you, but it definitely is a little more risky. Gibbs is a great player, and we saw what he did before at Alabama, but we also saw what he did during his time with Alabama as well. Great pass catching back, and that's where he could go to that next level. He could be that player that like an Austin Eckler, where maybe he's not getting the 13 to 18 carries a game, but he's getting 8 to 10. But he's also getting you 8 to 10 targets as well in the passing game, and that's huge from the running back position.
Definitely. And I wanted to add to that too because I've seen I just recently did a cornerstone running backs video, and my criteria on that was I was looking at running backs that we know for the running back position they just don't last as long as these other positions. And so what I did was 25 years of age or younger
Okay.
for my cornerstones, and I have Gibbs in that second tier down. I have Bijan in a tier of his own, but I
Okay.
have Gibbs in the same tier as Taylor and Hall, and I have him at the back of the tier. I would prefer Hall second, and then Taylor third, and then
Sure.
Gibbs fourth. But yeah, I was a little bit shocked to see him go over Taylor because he just profiles as a all down back. Gibbs doesn't necessarily profile as much as I love Gibbs. I
Right.
think he is going to be fantastic, especially in PPR leagues like this, where you're going to get that full point for every reception that he gets out of the backfield. And we've seen guys like Austin Eckler who, when they get the receptions out of the backfield, they are dynamite for fantasy football. So that's kind of the ceiling that we hope for Jameer Gibbs. But we just know the floor of Jonathan Taylor is so high, anyways. It's kind of like we were talking about, a little bit less risk to go Jonathan Taylor over Gibbs at this point in the draft.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So it's interesting how this has played out. Prescott fell a lot further than I thought he was going to fall, which I found kind of interesting. And I was crossing my fingers he ended up falling all the way to me. He did not, but I was hoping he would. But for a tight end premium draft, I don't know if everybody read that up top. Tight ends haven't been going very quick. The only one that went was an auto pick at
Yeah.
3.5. Other than that, none of the tight ends went. So in the third round, I kind of ended up getting Kyle Pitts. But before that, you got your boy Devontae Smith. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I mean, so full disclosure, I was actually debating between Dak Prescott and Mark Andrews. That's who I was
Okay.
debating, and then the third option was going to be Devontae Smith, and then I was also thinking about possibly doing Stephon Diggs,
Okay.
and I ended up going with Devontae Smith because I just looked at the quarterback position, and as much as I think Dak was the last of that tier that was still available, I think the gap between Dak and then the next tier down is a little bit slimmer than it is at some of these other positions. And also, um, I was watching a Destination Devy video the other day. They were talking about quarterbacks projecting like for the next 5 years who are going to be the top 10 in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And fun video for them. And shout out Ray GQ because he's going to be a guest on this show here next
Oh,
week
dope.
actually. So that is the first announcement we've made of that. But
Yeah. Did
they
you
were
know he
talking
actually
about.
started at Dynasty Nerds?
Did he?
Yeah, yeah. Not everybody knows that he started at Dynasty Nerds. Him
I
him
did
and I
not
go way
know that.
back. He actually tweeted out this random thread on Antonio Gandy Golden, and it was really good. And so him and I started talking about like small school prospects, and he was actually that was kind of where he started was Dynasty Nerds, and while he was with us, he started the Destination Debbie podcast, and then the rest is history. And obviously, he's doing fantastic. But yeah, I love Ray. He's a great dude.
Yeah, Ray's awesome. And I'll get back to my point here after I make this pick. Um, And I think this is where I'm going to end up going the quarterback because I'm going to end up going my guy Kirk Cousins.
There
And
you
I
go.
just part of my argument there was that I didn't think that the points per game difference that I was going to get from Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins was that big of a difference. In fact, there is a world of possibility, and I'm trying to say this without my purple lenses on, but there's a world of possibilities where Kirk Cousins outscores Dak Prescott this season.
Sure.
And in that video that Ray GQ and them were talking about, they went to keep trade cut, and some people have opinions about keep trade cut and the validity of it in the dynasty community, but I think it's a good tool nonetheless. However, they were talking about how at the age of 30, there is zero quarterbacks in the top 10 or in the top 20 on keep trade cut that are 30 years or older. There's zero.
Wow.
Yes. And so Dak Prescott turning 30 years old next year tells me that the value can't really go up.
Sure.
Um, and so I thought Devontae Smith's value could go up. He was a top 10 wide receiver this year. He's tied to Jalen Hurts. I've kind of already went a little bit younger with my first two picks with Herbert and Olave. I add Devontae. Now I feel very, very comfortable that I have three guys that I all think are cornerstone pieces on the roster. And now I can kind of play the board and just gobble up the value as it comes, which one of those is going to be Kirk Cousins for me. But I feel very comfortable with that position. And then with tight end, I ended up passing on it. Unfortunately, I didn't get any of the guys to come around, but yeah, that was just now I'm just gonna have to decide what I do with tight end.
Yeah, and that was where I ended up going because it's with tight ends, it's the haves and the have-nots. If you get one of these top four guys, which all four have now gone, it kind of started not I don't want to say a run, but right after Pitts, 2 picks later, Andrews went, and then Hawkinson went another 4 or 5 picks later there. So after that range, I tend to just kind of sit out. Like I'll just grab a bunch of guys at the end. So I'm either getting myself an elite guy, and especially in tight end premium, I prefer to do that. But if I can't get an elite guy, then I'm just gonna sit and wait. So I'm happy that I was able to get him. I do have a quarterback. I don't have that second one yet. Still no running backs, which this year has been a little odd for me because in the 3 startups that I've done, I've ended up taking running backs earlier than I typically do, but the value just hasn't seemed to be there when my picks were up. But
Mm-hmm.
part of that reasoning is the quarterback position. I'm okay with a lot of guys in this next tier that are going in round 7, 8, 9. Like there's a lot of guys in there that I still really like. So I have no problem getting 2 quarterbacks in that range. So, and there's a lot of wide receivers in that range too that I like. A lot of players that I've been gobbling up super late, guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, Marquise Brown, Amari Cooper. Like there's a lot of guys late that are good receivers too. So I've found myself grabbing a lot of running backs early, but just it hasn't really panned out for me. And with my 4th pick, I went another wide receiver. I ended up going with DK Metcalf. I know Jackson Smith and Jigba is now part of the Seattle Seahawks, but he's still the top guy. Geno showed that he can, make multiple wide receivers relevant with what he did last year with Lockett and Metcalf. So I have a very young core right now. Metcalf's like the elder statesman compared to Pitts, Trevor Lawrence, and Garrett Wilson. But I like the squad.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to ask you too, because we just touched about the Seahawks with the addition of Jackson Smith and Jigba. What, I mean, what does this do to Tyler Lockett? How do you feel about
Yeah.
Tyler Lockett now? Because it feels like for the last decade, like Tyler Lockett has been just good every year.
Right.
And
Right.
is Tyler Lockett's time done?
More or less. I mean, I think it's similar to what we've seen with Adam Thielen, where he was so good for such a long time, but eventually just things run out.
Yeah.
You get older, you're not able to do the things that you were able to once do, and maybe Tyler Lockett has one more year in him, and if so, awesome. Like, I'm happy for him, but make no, there's no confusion around. It's going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba's team along with DK Metcalf here very, very soon.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as much as we were just talking about running backs, I think I might actually end up taking one here because some of the guys at wide receiver that I was looking at came off the board.
Sure.
And I'm debating actually between Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs. I think both guys are
Your options.
fantastic. I think what I'm going to end up doing, and it may not be I don't know. I think I'm going to go Josh Jacobs, just the 2 years younger.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is for me, even though I think that there's a chance that Nick Chubb really could finish higher than Josh Jacobs this year. But we did just see Josh Jacobs have a stellar season for the
Yeah.
Las Vegas Raiders. So, yeah, that I was deciding between those two. I think the value at the running back position was pretty good right there. And there's guys like Judy, Debo, Pittman, Ridley, all those guys, but there's a chance that some of them are, right back around the turn where I'm going to pick next.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. This is a range where we're starting to see the value come back at running back. And I have a tough pick here because I'm very interested in Nick Chubb. But I am going to go with Najee Harris here. The reason being, he is an older running back for his class. I know he only has 2 years, but he's 25 years old now, going into his third season. But he has 3 years left. With him being a first round pick, he's got 3 years left. So if I can get somebody that I know is going to get the just massive workload that Najee Harris is going to get, and I'm going to get it for 3 years at minimum, feel pretty good about that value. And I could still turn around and trade him then after that point if he ends up getting signed to that second deal. So I'm going to go with Najee here to get my first running back.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's definitely the safest thing to do with your running backs, especially because we know, just like Rich says on your guys' show, 2-3 year window, right?
Yep.
And that's really, I think what we've seen with some of these running backs too is it's actually starting to become more like 2 year windows. We're not even seeing that third year sometimes,
Yeah.
and so I think when you can just take the volume for 2 years and you're going to get elite volume like Najee's going to get for 2 years, it's kind of hard not to just take the guy who is going to get the opportunity.
I had to go with the homie here. I love Javonte Williams, and I'm actually really glad Nick Goss is ahead of me because I was going to have to decide between Dobbins and Williams, and I love both of those players. So the fact that he took one of them off my hands for me, I didn't have to stress out about that pick, made things very nice. So I'm not complaining there. And things don't normally work out this nicely for me because I am a guy that I'm going to take whoever the best available player on my board is. I don't care about position. I don't care about, what I need. I don't care about any of that. But I more or less have a starting lineup almost with, I still need to get a few more receivers and another quarterback. But to have the diversity that I have on my board right now feels pretty good, not gonna lie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and I'm the same way. I kind of like to just take best player available, but somehow it's just worked out its way that it's kind of started to fill out a starting lineup for me as well. So I ended up going Brandon Ayuk though. I was looking at the running backs on the board, and yeah, Derrick Henry's there, but 30 years old, it's really tough for me to buy into Derrick Henry in startups right now, especially because the way that I like to play is I don't necessarily go into the startup thinking that I'm trying to go all in and win the championship this year. Like
Sure.
I want to get value. I want to kind of get a lay of the land. Those first 6 to 8 weeks in this first year after a startup is really where I'm kind of watching every one of these teams closely, see who's really a contender, see who's a pretender, and see where I can really gain some value and get the upper hand in some trade markets. So I really do like to do that. But I think Brandon Ayuk was one of the best players available there. I'm falling more and more in love with Brandon Ayuk this offseason than I have before. And I was pretty high on Brandon Ayuk coming in, but um, I got scared when Trey Lance got drafted. I was worried that it was going to hurt Debo,
Sure.
Kittle, Ayuk. I was worried it was going to hurt everybody. And Trey Lance hasn't seemed to be a thing anyways. And even the time that Trey Lance was the starter, it seemed like he had a pretty decent connection with Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we actually talked about on the Nerd Show this past week. Would you rather have Brandon Ayuk or Debo Samuel? And it's tough. They're both on the same team, same situation. Debo's a little bit older, but we know he's had more solid years overall. But Brandon Ayuk is a more traditional receiver, a little bit younger. So we were kind of debating back and forth on that. So I see where you stand on it because you had both available and you went
Yeah.
with Brandon Ayuk, which I actually did too, between the two guys.
Yeah, I think ultimately what it comes down to me is what I like out of my receivers, and you can kind of see a theme too amongst the guys that I've drafted. But I really am an advocate of elite route runners,
Hmm.
guys who know
Yeah,
how to separate, guys who can get open. Because if there's one thing that's guaranteed, is the more open you are, the more footballs you're gonna get. That's
sure.
just guaranteed. And it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. Maybe the quality of the target isn't as good as some other quarterbacks too. But when it comes down to it, if you can get open and you can separate well, you're going to get the football. And all of these guys are really good separators that I have on my team. And I'm a big fan of Matt Harmon's work over at Reception
Yeah.
Perception. And he's been very high on Brandon Ayuk as well. And he's kind of been predicting this breakout for Brandon Ayuk. And it kind of happened. And I don't know if we've even seen the ceiling of Brandon Ayuk yet.
Probably not. Probably not. And that offense, it's such a good offense, but it is tricky because there's so many people that need to be fed, and
Hmm.
that's the tricky part is trying to feed all of those mouths all at the same time. And we'll see if Brock Purdy can get the best out of all these guys because that's really all they need. They just need a facilitator. They don't
Yep.
necessarily need somebody to make a ton of big plays. They just need somebody, and he's a perfect West Coast quarterback. That's the job of a West Coast quarterback is to get the ball in your playmaker's hands and get it to him quickly.
Absolutely. And you see, just after that Ayuk Debo uh, battle that we had to kind of figure out, we had a McLaurin Dotson battle that was just shortly after. These guys are really close in ADP as well. What is your opinion on this Washington receiving room? How do you feel about Dotson? And how do you feel about McLaurin?
Man, I love both these guys. I really do. I love both of these receivers a lot. McLaurin, I don't know that we'll ever get the ceiling out of McLaurin that we deserved just because of how poor the quarterback play has been consistently there. So that's the tricky part with him is I think we could have had some borderline wide receiver 1 years, and I just don't know that we're ever going to get those. But Dotson is one of the best playmakers in his class. Fantastic hands, great at that spectacular catch. And dude was just an absolute touchdown magnet. I mean, he found ways to get in the end zone seemingly every single week for a team that didn't throw a lot of touchdowns. So the way that he was able to capitalize on his opportunities as a true rookie, ooh, good pick. That
Thank
was
you.
that was where I was going. Dang it. That
I
was
was
a good
debating between him and one other. I hope the other guy comes around. Um, and I'll let you know if he comes off the board, but I really hope he comes
pick.
around.
All right, we'll see. All right, I got 2 picks here. We're starting to see some teams take their third quarterback now. So I can't play any more quarterback chicken, that's for sure. I got to make sure I get my guy here.
Oh,
All
yeah,
right.
because you don't have your second yet.
I don't. I don't. I played a little
Okay.
quarterback chicken. I was curious to see, because every league's different. And
Hmm.
that's the fun part about Superflex too. The way that the quarterback position works out is a little different in every single draft. Some people will wait a lot longer, and others, I mean, good luck getting a starting quarterback after round like 5 or 6. So each one is a little bit different. So I have an interesting dilemma here, but I think I'm going to go the safer route now, and I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers as my starter here.
Not bad.
There are other young quarterbacks that I like in here that I'd be willing
Mhm.
to give a shot to, but I need with a team that is young, but I think also would have the potential to be in the race right away. With such a complete roster, if Kyle Pitts balls out in a tight end premium league, things could look pretty good pretty quickly. I need to make sure that I have a steady option there in Aaron Rodgers, and then I also get the connection Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson, which is pretty fun. I'm not
Love it.
um, but then I can take a little more risk at quarterback later with more of my third quarterback with that's an upside guy.
Yeah, and that kind of first of all, I love the stack. I love stacking in Dynasty. I love stacking in any type of format, really. But love the Rogers and Wilson stack. I think that's has a very high ceiling for you. My question is, what do you think about the longevity of Rogers? Because there's some people who think that like he's a 1 year guy, and then there's some people who think that he can play for 3, 4 more years. What is your opinion on that?
I think Aaron Rodgers is gonna do whatever Aaron Rodgers wants to do. And as silly as that sounds, like that's
My guy
100%
just
how
went.
I feel. Like,
I was waiting on Miles Sanders.
oh, that would have been a good pick. That would have been a very good pick. Um, Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy that I feel like he could leave football tomorrow and be completely content. I feel like he could, pull a Tom Brady and play for another 6 seasons. Like, I feel like it's truly going to be like, what's his vibe? What's he feeling? Like, what's he wanting to do? Are there any records he's chasing? Yeah, so I think it's going to totally be up to him. So for me to say for certain one way or another, I really don't know. I feel like there's a good opportunity that we'll get at least 2 years though out of Aaron Rodgers, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
I think that's fair. And I think too, it's also going to kind of depend on how competitive are the Jets. I think the Jets are going to be. I think they're going to be a really good football team.
I do.
But if they don't make the playoffs, which I guess could be a possibility,
It's a tough
um,
division.
if Buffalo plays really well like they've been playing, and maybe Miami takes that next step forward, Tua takes a step forward, all of a sudden that division looks a little murky. And if they don't make the playoffs, I wonder what Aaron Rodgers decides to do, because I don't think that he came here to miss the playoffs and
Do,
not play for a Super Bowl.
do you think he goes full Brett Favre? Do you think he then, Kirk Cousins leaves and he joins your Minnesota Vikings?
If it gets us a Super Bowl, I surely hope so. But I don't know. I don't know, man. The whole Brett Favre thing too. It didn't really work out the way we wanted it
It
either.
did
That was
not.
heartbreak itself. So,
It did
um,
not.
I ended up not getting Miles Sanders. That's who I wanted to come around. I just think him going to Carolina and reuniting with Frank Reich, who was with him when he was in Philadelphia as a rookie. Um, I just think it's a lot of opportunity. That's a really good offensive line. I think there's a real chance that Miles Sanders can be a low end running back one for your fantasy rosters this year, and they signed him for more than that. So there's a chance that there's a 2 year window here as well with Miles Sanders. I just feel more confident in the opportunity that Sanders would get than the guy that I took, but I think that DeAndre Swift, he's kind of been written off, and I know a lot of his value comes from the receiving game and things like that. And we kind of know that Jalen Hurts isn't the type of quarterback that checks down a ton, but
Right.
he's electric still. And I just feel confident enough that down here, where I'm looking at some of these other guys like Zach Charbonnet, Aaron Jones, Cam Akers, Rashad White, like it's a lot of guys who have not up to this point, and then Aaron Jones, who's just a little bit over the hill, I think.
Sure.
And I'm just a little bit more confident in DeAndre Swift, and I think the ceiling's still high enough that it's worth the risk down here. I feel safe enough where I've drafted some of these guys that I can start taking on some of this risk.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the range where you're looking for upside, None of these players are safe players at this point. All of them have a wart somewhere. So you're just going for the one that you think could bust out and could be that ceiling guy. But I did want to ask you, because we talked about the tight end position earlier, and we talked about either being a have or a have not. And you followed that mold, didn't take any of these mid-range guys. What are you looking at now as far as tight ends? Are there any that you have your eye on? Are you looking for one soon? Or are you going to keep playing chicken with it for a while?
Honestly, where we're at right now with the tight end position, if I get a decent enough value on some guys like Michael Mayer, who I truly do think he's not a generational tight end prospect, but I think he's pretty dang special. And he's going into a situation too where, Josh McDaniel has featured the tight end in his offense before.
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo has definitely favored the tight end in his offense before. And they lose Darren Waller, where now that tight end one job is just wide open. I think there's a real range of outcomes where Michael Mayer has a really
Yeah.
solid rookie season, and then this rookie contract for Michael Mayer could be fantastic. So I do like Michael Mayer here. Outside of him, I don't love taking Waller here. I think he can be fine this year, but just I don't know. I'm just not really big into that. And then David Njoku, I know some people like Evan Ingram, some people like. I'm not sold on those guys. I would
Okay.
almost, if I don't get a good value on Mayer, I wouldn't take Mayer this round, but maybe if he's there in the 10th round, I'll look at him. But other than that, like I really don't mind punting it down to like the Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, Chigozima Conquo. Like I don't mind punting it to that tier and
Yeah.
taking two of those guys maybe back to back.
No, that's a tier I like, and those are a lot of players that I have quite a few shares of. Komet, Dulcich, guys like that. I have quite a few shares of those guys, and they really could. I mean, you look at Cole Komet. Cole Komet had the second most snaps out of any tight end in football last year. And over the second half of the season, he was tight end 4 overall. So if what was going on the second half of the season continues, he's going to be a really good tight end for your fantasy football teams. But it was so brutal early with how little the Bears passed the ball that I think people just don't, you see the total season, you're like, he didn't have a very good season. But if you look at when they were actually playing like a normal NFL team and throwing the football,
Mm-hmm.
he had a lot of production. So that is a guy I do like quite a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you go down, like let's look at
Oh,
he
there goes
just
Cole
actually
Kmet.
came off the board. So as we look at like the back half of last year, where is it? Yeah, right here. There's double digit points here. Like he and a 23-point week in week 10, like he did kind of figure it out. Like you said, once they started playing like a normal football team, obviously up here they were just telling Justin
Brutal.
Fields to run the football every time.
Yep.
And but yeah, he played pretty well. I have him in a couple leagues, and um he's kind of a guy that I'm just holding. I just want to see what happens this year. I think adding DJ Moore definitely helps. It doesn't hurt to add a second guy to kind of take some of that coverage away and open up that middle of the field a little bit more, especially a
Yeah.
guy like DJ Moore, who we know is a pretty good route runner. And yeah, I think Cole Kmet could be coming up a little bit. Like we could see a little bit of a rise in his value over the next 6 months or so.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen a couple more tight ends go. We just mentioned Komet went, and then David Njoku went as well.
Hmm.
So we might have a little tight end tier going on here. So, but you're saying you're not going Mayer this round no matter what, right?
I don't think so. I just don't know. I guess the only way that I will go Mayor this round is if Christian Kirk comes off the board. Because if Christian Kirk is there at my pick,
Mhm.
he's my pick.
Yeah.
But I guess it's all going to come down to Sugar Shane right here. We'll see what happens. I know he's auto picked once or twice, but he seems to keep hopping back in and making a couple picks as well. But
Probably
let's
in
kind
between Call of Duty games or something like that.
something like that. We'll see. Yeah, it looks like he's going to go auto to Aaron Jones, and then I'm going to end up going Christian Kirk. And I feel very, very good about my wide receiver room right now because I have
Yeah.
Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, and Christian Kirk.
That's a good room. That's a good room. Pretty young room overall too. I know Brown and Kirk, you would probably say are in their prime right now, but yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
wide receiver room.
yeah, definitely. And let's kind of just recap what's happened around this turn. Since we were talking about Cole Kmet, we had Mike Williams, Brock Purdy, Kadarius Toney, Rashad White, Trey Lance, and then coming back around in the 9th round, we had Devon Achane, Mac Jones, Cole Kmet, David Njoku, Aaron Jones, and then my pick, Christian Kirk. So, does anything up there really stand out for you? I guess between that Mike Williams and that Devon Achane, does any of that stand out to you? Is there? I'll just say right now, I don't love the Kadarius Toney pick right there.
Yeah, it's a high risk, high reward play. I'm not sold on Kadarius Toney. The other thing that stands out to me is how far Trey Lance has fallen. Even after all the Brock Purdy stuff, he was still being taken in the 4th, 5th round at the beginning of this offseason, and he's just slowly falling down boards every single time I do a startup or a mock draft.
Yeah, but him and Brock Purdy come off back-to-back quarterbacks, one right after the other. Do you have a preference on either of the two? Because some people are having to make that decision of when you're down here and you're trying to get that third guy, are you picking Purdy or are you picking Lance?
Oh, I'm picking Purdy. Sorry. I got focused on my pick. I was running out
No,
of
it's all good.
time. I slightly panicked, and then I was like, I don't know that was the pick I wanted to make. But oh well. No, I'm 100% going Purdy. I've never been a big Trey Lance guy. I think everything that they've said and shown leads me to believe that they think Brock Purdy is their quarterback. Now, could he still be a starting quarterback in the NFL? Sure, Trey Lance could get traded or released or whatever. But right now, I think Brock Purdy's their guy.
Yeah. I agree, and I was actually on the opposite end of you where I did believe in Trey Lance, and I was very high on him. Coming into the class, I had him as I want to say I had him as QB3. It was just behind T-Law and Fields, and I actually, full disclosure, I had Fields as my QB1 coming into the class.
I did
It was
too.
it was a little bold, I know, because a lot of people say that T-Law is generational, and I think he is, but I think Fields is just more dynamic for fantasy football. But we'll see what happens this year. When
I did a little bit of a cop out. I didn't say it was fully Justin Fields. I said I think that I feel just as good about Justin Fields as I do Trevor Lawrence. So I didn't like fully commit to like being that
Okay.
bold, but I was like dipping my toe out there to be like, hey, these guys are both pretty good, but don't forget about Justin Fields. But I don't think I went like the full saying no, Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I fully committed. And I
I
was
wish I
like,
would have.
Justin Fields is my QB1, and Trevor Lawrence is a hell of a second pick for whoever is going to get that second quarterback. But Justin Fields should be your first quarterback off the board. That's kind of where I was at. But um, I was going to say, too, how do you feel about Sam Howell? Oh, let me finish up my point about Trey Lance, because I had him over Zach Wilson, and I know a lot of people like Zach Wilson. And for what it's worth, neither of them were the right answer, it seems.
Right.
But I had high hopes with him going to the 49ers, and I believe in Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked for Trey Lance. And I know there's people who feel like he hasn't really gotten a shot. What would be your opinion on that? Do you think he's got a shot? Do you think it matters if he got a shot or not? Or is it time to really just move on from Trey Lance and fantasy? Because he still has value at this point. There's people who
Sure.
do still believe in Trey Lance. And
Absolutely.
I actually ended up flipping him last offseason, and this is after Rich said that he had a source that,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is right after that, and I flipped Trey Lance for a 23 first and Kirk Cousins, and it's worked out fantastic
Beautifully.
because the 23 first ended up being the number 4 pick, and
Wow.
I grabbed Jackson Smith and Jigba with it.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that
So
worked out. That worked out great.
yeah, it worked out fantastic. But what would you? What would you do with Trey Lance at this point?
I mean, if you have him, you kind of just have to hold and go down with the ship at this point. His value's absolutely plummeted. Nobody's going to give you anything close to what you would have gotten a year ago or 2 years ago. Like, you're just not getting it. So at this point, it's probably better to just sit pat, wait, see what happens with him. Like, because like would a second round pick, which is probably the best you could possibly do. Like, second round picks are so hit and miss. I would
Yeah.
rather at this point, even though I'm not a Trey Lance guy, just hold on to him and just see what happens. Because if he ends up on a team, now all of a sudden you're getting first round picks for him again. And he doesn't even have to play well. He just has to be named the starter on a team. And now you're getting first round picks for him again.
Yeah. I actually offered a second in a couple of my leagues this offseason when it was a couple months ago, when we had a little bit less clarity on what was going to happen with Brock Purdy. And I don't know if we actually have a ton of clarity still at this point.
Sure.
Um, but I offered, and people were just declining. I mean, nobody wants to sell Trey Lance, and I don't blame them. Like you said, you're not really getting anything worth much. And at this point, it's kind of like you said, you sink with the ship. So
Yeah. You just
you see,
don't.
as we came back around, Michael Mayer was on the board, and so we talked about it. I played chicken, I gambled, and uh, turns out that I should continue gambling, especially in Las Vegas, where Michael Mayer is playing football.
There you go. Yeah, that
And
worked out
that's
beautiful.
actually where I'm from, so maybe I get a little bit of hometown good luck.
Really? I see. With all the Vikings here, I assumed Minnesota.
Yeah, no. So I'm from Las Vegas. Grew up there my whole life, actually from like the age of 4, but that's pretty much like my whole life that I grew up in Las
Yeah.
Vegas. Went to Utah for college and lived there for a couple years. My wife and I got married, and she's in graduate school now, so I am living in New Jersey while she finishes up her medical school. And from there, we'll see where we go. But I am Las Vegas to Utah to Jersey. That's kind of where I've been going.
So where did the Vikings love come from?
Yeah, funny because I actually didn't have any football team in Las Vegas growing up, and so I actually wasn't a big football person to begin with. I've always been a basketball guy.
Sure.
Now I'm more a football guy than I'm a basketball guy, but that's what I played growing up. I was always playing on high school teams and so on. So I was always an NBA guy, and when I started watching football, it's because I got in a fantasy league with some of my
Yep.
basketball teammates, and I was like, okay, I should probably watch some of this stuff that I'm playing now. And at the time, uh, Adrian Peterson, this is in middle school probably for me.
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson had just gotten drafted by the Vikings, and was on a just, I mean, he was just so dominant at Oklahoma. And I was like, you know what? That's my guy. I'm just going to follow Adrian Peterson. And I became a Vikings fan, and I've just stuck. I mean, even post Peterson, I've stuck with
Sure.
Minnesota. And funny enough is, as I've gotten older, my grandparents actually told me that my dad's first favorite football team was the Minnesota Vikings. So I guess it was just kind of fate that happened, and I never
Wow.
even knew.
That's wild.
Yeah, they sent me pictures a couple years back, and he's in a Vikings hat, Vikings hoodie, like all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, I never knew that, but apparently it was his first football team that he liked, and it was mine as well.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool for sure. Well, you're
So
back up, man.
we're kind of in a tier that I don't love. Just a lot of these guys, it's kind of, you got to make decisions. Um, I really don't mind going Schultz here, but I'm gonna play chicken again, and I'm gonna go with a guy who probably only has a 1 year window, maybe two. But James Conner should be pretty dang good this year.
Yeah.
He should get some volume, especially with Kyler Murray not playing. They're gonna have to lean on James Conner, and I only have two backs at this point, so adding a third guy for bye weeks or injury in James Conner, he should be pretty valuable to the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a good pick.
And
Uh
definitely a higher ceiling than those guys. I mean, you have Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, Roshan Johnson. I think he kind of has a higher ceiling than those guys right now. Roshan's
right.
intriguing. Um,
Yes.
is this who you're looking at? Is
He
Roshan who
was
you're looking
he's
at?
one of the couple players I'm looking at. So I'm trying to decide, do I take my so Chig just went. That was one of the guys I was deciding between. And then Dalton Schultz and Roshan Johnson. Those were the other two guys that I was, really looking at, because I do want to get a second tight end. As much as I love Kyle Pitts, we're in round 11 now. I at some point need to get one. I want to get one that I like. Schultz would be one of the top players on my board at the moment. Roshan Johnson's another one that's really, really intriguing to me. And Tank Bigsby. I really like Tank
I
Bigsby
like
as
Tank too.
well. So it's a really tough choice for me. Um, I'm gonna go.
Man, I feel like you and I were looking at the exact same players that whole tier.
That's funny. I'm gonna go Tank here. He was my highest pre-draft evaluation. I think Roshan Johnson's path might be a little bit clearer than his, but I just think Tank's the superior talent, and I'm not convinced that he's not going to get a decent amount of run with this Jacksonville Jaguars team. Travis Etienne's a fine player, but you look at his games, he had games where he had 3 or 4 games that were really good. You know, he's a top end running back. And then he would have weeks where he was like a running back 5, a running back 6, like 3 points, 6 points, like just terrible games. So the consistency wasn't there. And that's what you get out of somebody that doesn't have great vision. The consistency just isn't always there. I think, with Doug Peterson, we've pretty consistently seen more of a running back by committee. So I think Tank Bigsby's going to be more heavily involved than people want him to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you are speaking my language right now. I've not really been a big fan of what Travis Etienne brings to the table, and I really do like Tank Bigsby. I think um, I'm interested to hear how high you had him because I'm pulling up right now just for fun. I'm pulling up. This is my rookie rankings that I had for 2023. This
Nice.
is just right after the NFL draft. I released these maybe 2 days after the NFL draft. So
Okay.
I had Tank in as running back 8, but I have him in the same tier as pretty much from 3 to 8. That is all one tier for me, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
No.
I'd be interested to hear where you have him.
Yeah. So pre-draft, he was actually, I think he was running back 5 for me pre-draft. I'll have to go back and look at my nerd score, but I believe he was running back 5 for me pre-draft. He dropped a spot or two, but I still have him like right around 6 or 7. I don't, my pre-draft rankings and my post-draft, they usually don't drastically change unless somebody goes in an entirely different round than I expect them to, like drastically different. A couple years ago with guys like Hakeem Butler and guys like that. But if they go in the rough range that I'm expecting them to go, I try not to let situation factor in too much because remember, I think one of the poster children for this on the positive end was AJ Brown. Remember we always heard how bad it was going to Tennessee. What a terrible landing spot. He ends up being an elite receiver. Conversely, we hear how great of a landing spot it is for CEH, and he's going to be a stud running back, and he ends up being a complete bust. So I think sometimes we just put a little, not that it's not part of the equation, but I think we make it too big of a piece of that pie. So my post draft and pre draft will change, but rarely will you see a guy jump 5, 6, 7 spots.
Yeah, me too. And full disclosure, I've used your guys' nerd score as inspiration for doing kind of my own thing as well. And
Good, good.
that's kind of how I do it as well. And love your guys' film room. That's where I'm watching all my stuff. So appreciate you guys for that one. But
Absolutely.
as we come around the turn, the guys that I kind of wanted, Okonkwo, Bigsby, Schultz, Roshan, all those guys went. And so I kind of did what I'm assuming you did as well. And I just said, hey, this is super flex. When all else fails, go quarterback. And they have the most value. And to me, I was picking between Jimmy G and Matthew Stafford, but I think when it's all said and done, I'll take Matthew Stafford, and I might double dip because I don't mind having 3 or 4 quarterbacks in a super flex. And there's some leagues that I play in where we're like super deep, like 40 roster spots.
Oh wow, yeah.
And yeah, and then like yeah, it's crazy. And I'll have 5 or 6 quarterbacks. Some of them will be like I like to actually target guys like Minshew or Heineke, like guys. One
High
of my
end backups.
strategies, and I'll give people kind of this as advice too, is when I'm playing in leagues that deep, I like to look 1 or 2 years into the future contract wise and say, okay, which of these guys who's a pretty solid backup has shown some flashes, which of these guys has a contract that's ending and could potentially find their way into a starting role via free agency. And
Sure.
I've done that. And in previous years, I've landed Guys like Taylor Heineke. I've landed guys like who did I recently? Got Baker Mayfield this year,
Sure.
who now is probably the starter for Tampa, and so on. So like I've done that a couple times, and that's kind of what I like to do is target these guys that could possibly be free agents, and that's what I'll do in deep leagues. This we won't have to do that here because it's not
No.
that deep, but that's
Well,
just something that I like to do.
and that I haven't mentioned a last few of my picks, so I'll mention them real quick. I went Jamison Williams in the 8th, Alvin Kamara in the 9th, Will Levis in the 10th, Tank Bigsby in the 11th, and then Desmond Ritter in the 12th. And so I already have 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Did I need 4? No, but like I said before, I'm going to take the best available player on the board. And when quarterbacks slip at all, that's value. And so I'm going to
Hmm.
scoop up that value. And even if it means that my roster doesn't look as pretty as I want today, I have the rest of the offseason and into the season to make trades, acquire different players via, the block or whatever. Like I have ways to change up my lineup. I just want to get the most value that I can right now. And I wouldn't put it past me to get another quarterback before it's all said and done. We only have 15 rounds. And that means a fifth of my team will be quarterbacks, but
Hmm.
it's worth it.
Yeah, and I think what we should also kind of consider too is when we're looking at guys here that went in. Let's just look at that 12th round, even at the very beginning. Roshan, Jalen Hyatt, Marvin Mims, Jaden Reed, Brandon Cooks. If you traded any of those guys today just for strictly draft capital, you're not going to get a first round pick likely for any of those
Right.
guys.
Right.
There's a chance you could get it for Desmond Ritter,
Right. Yep.
especially if he comes in the first couple weeks and 20 points per
Balling out.
game. Like there's a chance that you could really get a first. There's a chance you could get a first for Matthew Stafford. So even though, like you said, we're not necessarily starting these guys on our team right now, they do have the most value, and you don't have to build a starting lineup or a complete roster in the startup. You just
Yep.
need to accumulate value, and then you have at this point we have 2 months until the NFL season really starts,
Right.
week 1. But some of these people who are doing startups, way early in the offseason, you have 4 or 5 months that you can trade and make waiver additions and do all this stuff where you can actually fill out a roster. But in the startup, you really shouldn't be working from that perspective of trying to fill a lineup. You should be trying to accumulate as much value.
Yeah, and if it works out and you fill out a lineup, cool. Like that's great. It makes it easy for you. But don't pass on a superior player or a superior value just because, oh, I need another running back, or oh, I need another receiver, or oh, I need like that's what I was thinking. I only have 3 receivers. I really probably need another receiver. But at that point, receiver wasn't the best player on the board. And looking right now, receiver's still not the best player on the board for me.
No.
And I'm going to take my boy. I'm going to take Tyjae Spears. I talked about him
Nice.
all off season. Love this guy. I literally have a Tyjae Spears t-shirt. Jared Wackerly bought me one and sent it to me. So now I have a Javonte Williams sweatshirt and a Tyjae Spears t-shirt. So I'm decked out in the dudes that I rep. That's for sure. But
That's
uh,
awesome.
look, I get the knee issues. I do. And
Yeah.
I've heard about them all off season. But you know who else also heard all about it? The Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans did their homework and they were still willing to draft this kid in the 3rd round. So if they're still willing to make that kind of investment in a player, despite all of these issues, they must feel pretty confident that he's going to be just fine for the next 2 or 3 year window. And that's all I'm caring about. If I get any more than that, everything past that point is bonus. Everything past that point is bonus. And it's still in the realm of possibility that we could see Derrick Henry get moved. He's been hurt. Like there's a lot of different things. And people say, well, what's the difference between him and Hilliard or Evans or different guys that have been his backups before? Well, one, the draft capital, like this is very good draft capital.
Yeah.
But 2, he wasn't 30
Talent.
years old then.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. And I was going to add, you already touched on it, but a couple rounds ago, I mean, it was probably a few rounds now at this point, but I was talking about how I wasn't willing to commit to Derrick Henry because of the age.
Yeah.
And so you get Tajay Spears here when we're already a little bit worried about age in Derrick Henry and durability and things like that. Like at the end of the day, as superhuman as Derrick Henry has been, those tires they just and the wheels, they just fall off, man. They
They do.
do. And that's just what happens. And like you said with Tyler Lockett, all good things come to an end, and Derrick Henry has been phenomenal, but it's going to come to an end. And it looks like Tajay Spears, as of right now, today, is the next guy up.
Well, especially with, did you see the report on Haskins?
Uh-uh.
Hassan Haskins, there's a
Oh,
huge thing with
yes, I did
his
see that.
girlfriend and all that. So, I mean, the only other guy that would have maybe sort of, been competition for touches is gone. So, not that I was even worried about him. They're not drafting a guy in the third round on a team that should probably be rebuilding. Like, they're not doing that unless they really believe in that player. So, I'm not concerned in the least.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I think I kind of panic picked here, but I went with Isaiah Likely. We come around, and it's just my thought process there really was we're in tight end premium,
Yeah.
and he's young enough, and he flashed a little bit last year, enough that we don't see that very often, honestly. What he did last year, we don't see that very often from rookie tight ends.
Right.
And I know it was because Mark Andrews missed some time, but I, I just I don't mind having Likely on my team. I
Yeah.
especially don't mind having him over guys like Chase Brown, Jamal Williams. Those kinds of guys, you can find replacements for those guys pretty quickly. It's not as easy to find those young tight ends that have shown you stuff
Right.
already. So that's kind of why I went Likely.
Nope, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. I went Alec Pierce just before that, so I did end up finally having a fourth receiver after all this time. But yeah, like I said, I stick true. Like, I think sometimes people wonder, and I've had people say this before where I've drafted with them and stuff like that. They're like, "So you really do the things that you talk about on the podcast?" I'm like, "Yes." I don't just do this just for fun. Like these are my actual thoughts. Like I execute the way that I talk on the show. So I think sometimes people wonder if people just make up stuff or whatever. And maybe there are people that do that. But for me, if it's something that I talk about on the show or I tweet about, like, that's genuinely how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's funny you say that because I had somebody in my leagues the other day. He started watching all of my videos and um, appreciate that, but it's giving away some of what I do thought process wise to the guys in my league, and he laughed because he was like, "I'll notice that you will do something, you'll make a move, you'll make a trade, you'll do something, and then the next day the video comes out about why you did it." And it's like he's like, "You're always making the move right before the video comes out." And so you're smart enough to do that now where we can't kind of watch the video and then see you make the move. You always tend to try and do it before the video comes out.
No, you're a smart man, but um I've literally had people drafting with me and they'll show me, like, they'll take screenshots of my Dynasty Nerds rankings that they have right next to them while I'm drafting. And I'm like, "You
That's
guys suck."
funny. That's funny. Yeah, I earlier this offseason, I probably 2 months ago, I was made a movie or a video about how Alexander Madison was a buy, the rumors of Dalvin Cook,
Yeah.
being released and stuff like that. I was like, "Hey, guys, he's being valued higher than he was, at this time last year, obviously because of these rumors, but he's not being valued at his peak yet. And if you buy him, I think the move on from Dalvin Cook is almost for certain at this point." And I said to buy him. And then 2 days ago, I made a video saying now he's a sell because
Yeah.
he's now kind of reached peak value. And the guy mentioned that because I traded Madison the day before that video comes out. I traded Madison straight across for Miles Sanders.
Mhm.
Um, and he was like, "It's just funny how that continues to happen." He sees that happen in some of our leagues that I do.
Love it. Absolutely love it. You're this is our last pick here. What are you thinking with your last pick, man?
Man, I just want somebody of value. As we get down here, now there's some guys in here that I say that jokingly, but I probably don't mind adding an extra running back, somebody who's a dart throw here. I
Sure.
also don't necessarily mind going Hendon Hooker,
Yeah.
but I'm for the sake of it, I'm not going to. I'm gonna go Damian Harris, and I've been a James Cook truther. Um, But they didn't sign Damian Harris for no reason. I think the reality is that he is going to get some of the goal line work, And for that reason, he's going to have some value because they score at a high enough clip that there should be some opportunity there. I think it's really in the range of outcomes to have him produce similarly to how he did when he was the starter for the Patriots, even with James Cook involved in this offense.
Yeah.
So I am going to take him, and he'll be my fourth running back on the roster. But like I said, I don't mind guys like that where in case of an injury or a bye week, you just plug them into the lineup and, hope you get a touchdown out of them or two and make that your week.
There you go. There you go. I love it. With my last pick, I'm still a few away, and I'm wrestling between a few players, but I'm leaning towards Irv Smith Jr. I've always been a big fan of Irv. I think he's a talented player. Just injuries have really, really crushed him. But he's now in Cincinnati, and it's a 1-year deal. But we've seen this happen before with players where they get these 1-year deals in better situations for their fantasy value, and I think that's what Irv has here. I think this is a better situation for his fantasy value. We saw Hayden Hurst last year look pretty good, especially towards the end of the year in playoff time. Like, was getting a lot of targets. Irv could absolutely get a boost here in value because of his time with Cincinnati. And even if he doesn't stay there and re-sign there could be another team that's then willing to pony up, give him a 3-year deal of $12 million or $14 million. And now all of a sudden he finds himself back into that range of, he went right now. I literally did all this talking about Irv Smith for no reason
And
because
so your
Mr.
second
Competitive
choice
Edge.
is
Oh my goodness. You texted him, didn't you? You said, take Irv Smith.
No, I was gonna say I have an Irv Smith signed helmet right here on my
There you go.
whatever you call it, bookshelf behind me. I have a signed mini helmet from Irv, and both of these jerseys are signed as well. But he's my number one most rostered player in the Dynasty GM.
There
Irv
you
Smith Jr.
go.
And he has hurt me for way too many years, and it is I just I haven't. He's at a point right now too where his value is too low that you don't
There's
sell
no
him.
point
I
in
mean,
trying to move.
you just gotta rock with it and see what happens. But I totally agree with you. I think best case scenario was Cincinnati, and I made it just it was luck, honestly. Now it was an educated guess, but I made this video. It's one of my favorite videos that I've made up to this point, and I'm going to do this every year. But I took all of the free agents. I went position by position, and I took like the top free agents on Spotrac, and I looked at the market values and some of the other stuff, and I made videos where I was like, okay, where are real possibilities for these guys to land? And then I
Yeah.
made my prediction and stamped where I thought they were going to go. I said the best case scenario and where I thought Irv was going to land was Cincinnati, and that's where he ended up going. So, um,
Crushed it.
educated guess. It was pretty lucky, but also it was fun nonetheless. But I'm going to do that every year. But this was the best case scenario for Irv Smith, and I think you're right. Like we even saw in spurts Hayden Hurst, have some fantasy value where he was streamable and stuff like that last year, and I would argue that Irv Smith is more talented than
I
Hayden
agree.
Hurst is. And so I think the ceiling is just a little bit higher. Now, as the draft ended, the final pick was Puka Nakua, which is funny because he's been rising in the Dynasty community pretty significantly lately. But what I like to do at the end of these mock drafts is we'll just recap our picks. You can go first, and then I'll go, and then tell me your favorite pick. Maybe it's your most where you got the most value, maybe
Sure.
the player you like the most, and then tell me your least favorite pick because oftentimes too when we do these dynasty startups, you look back and you say, okay, maybe I panicked in that round and I took a guy I
Yeah.
didn't like, or maybe a couple guys that I wanted got sniped, and then all of a sudden you looked at something else. So I like reflecting and saying, okay, this is my favorite, this is my least favorite, and I want to hear why. So run me through your lineup and then tell me your favorite and your least favorite.
All right. So do you want me to go by order of picks or do you want me to go like starting lineup and then bench?
Um, Either way, I think if you wanted to just go in order of how you pick them, that's fine.
Perfect. All right. So Trevor Lawrence, Garrett Wilson, Kyle Pitts, DK Metcalf, Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, Aaron Rodgers, Jamison Williams, Alvin Kamara, Will Levis, Tank Bigsby, Desmond Ritter, Ty J. Spears, Alec Pierce, and then Jawan Johnson was my last pick. Another tight end that I do like. My My one that I kind of panicked on was Alvin Kamara in the ninth. I was running out of time, and that's the tough part about like doing these shows. You're talking, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh crap, I got to make a pick." That's kind of what happened there. I don't hate it. I don't think it would have been my pick. Hopefully he doesn't get suspended, and he's a guy that can propel me to a fantasy championship in a league like this. So for a pick that I don't love, it could have been a lot worse. The pick that I probably liked the most was probably the Kyle Pitts selection there. I think people were trying to wait and see how long they could wait on tight end and a tight end premium, and getting Kyle Pitts at the end of the third in a tight end premium feels like pretty good value.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, for me, I go Justin Herbert, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, Kirk Cousins, Josh Jacobs, Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Swift, Christian Kirk, Michael Mayer, James Conner, Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo, Isaiah Likely, and Damian Harris. Um, it's not necessarily a pick. I kind of wish that I went in on tight end a little bit earlier because it does feel a little bit weak. But I think the pick that I like the least is the Isaiah Likely. I kind of mentioned it already when I was doing it. I said I kind of panicked a little bit and decided to just go tight end because it's a premium. But I think seeing Irv go 15-9, I probably like Irv more than I like Likely, and I ended up taking Likely over him. So
Sure.
don't really like that, but I don't mind if, my least favorite pick is in the 14th round. There could be a lot worse things. My favorite pick, I think my favorite pick is Brandon Ayuk at 6'7". I just think the ceiling is sky high for Ayuk. Like I said with you when I first drafted him, I don't think we've seen the ceiling, and so far he's shown us some pretty good stuff. So getting him at the 6th round as my wide receiver 3, I feel very good about that, especially when you put him next to Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk, Devontae Smith, and Chris Olave.
Yeah, no, that's a good wide receiver core.
Yeah. Well, that is all we had on the agenda today. Garrett, do you have anything you want to shout out? Anything you want to say before we get out of here today?
You can follow me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. If you're not part of the Nerd Herd, we'd love to have you join. All kinds of awesome tools as far as the GM, the Nerd Score, the Film Room, the extra podcast, all kinds of good stuff. But yeah, thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah, no worries, man. And just like Garrett, I'm going to plug too. So if you guys have not joined our Discord, it is free to join. Go make sure you join that. We are doing a giveaway for a free signed NFL jersey mystery box. All you have to do to enter that giveaway is be subscribed to this channel and be a member of the Discord. Once you get those two things done for me, all you do is go into the giveaway tab on our Discord, click participate, and then we'll give it away at the end of July. So make sure you guys go do that for me. And make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we will see you guys on the next video. Thank you again, Garrett.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right, man. See you later.
See ya.